Welcome back to Midnight Affair Tales. Thank you for joining us. The military transport plane touched down on U.S. soil, but Staff Sergeant Ronan Hayes barely felt the relief. After 15 brutal months in Afghanistan, all he wanted was to step inside his house, wrap his arms around Delilah and forget the war. His unit had celebrated. Laughter, cigars and whiskey. But Ronan? He had only one thought, her. He hadn't told her he was coming home early. He wanted to surprise her, to see her reaction when he walked through that door. Would she cry? Would she jump into his arms like she always did? As he drove through the familiar streets of Knoxville, Tennessee, the memories flooded back. Late-night talks with Delilah on the porch, morning coffee together, whispered, "I love yous" before deployments. Finally, he pulled into his driveway. Their house. Their home. The porch light was on, glowing warmly. She's home. His hands trembled as he reached for the door handle. But then he stopped. Laughter. Not just any laugh. A man's laugh. Confident. Inside his house. Ronan's heart pounded. The second laugh followed, hers. That soft, intimate giggle she used to make when she curled up against him. His stomach twisted into knots. The air in his lungs turned thick, suffocating. This isn't happening. Moving like a ghost, his boots silent on the steps, Ronan stepped toward the side window. The curtains weren't fully drawn. He had a view. He looked inside. His world shattered. There, in his bed, tangled in his sheets, was Delilah. And another man. Ronan's breath caught. His hands clenched into fists so tight his knuckles turned white. The man turned his face. Ronan's blood ran ice cold. It wasn't just any man. It was Grayson Holt. His old enemy. Final line, "Who the hell is in my house?" Ronan didn't move. Didn't breathe. His pulse hammered in his ears as he stared at the scene in front of him. Delilah arched her back, laughing as Grayson kissed her neck. Her hands ran through his hair, the same way she used to touch Ronan. Something inside Ronan snapped. Every gunfight, every moment of war, every night spent in the dirt waiting for the next attack. He had survived all of it for this? For her? And now, she was moaning another man's name. Ronan's hands twitched toward his side. His instinct was to reach for a weapon. But he had none. No. Killing them now would be too easy. A real soldier didn't strike in anger. A real soldier waited. Slowly, carefully, he pulled his phone from his pocket. He snapped a photo. Proof. He listened. He studied. What were they saying? Grayson smirked. "Think your husband's ever coming back?" Delilah laughed. "I don't care. He's gone. Gone." Something dark settled inside Ronan. They had no idea. He was right here. He stepped back into the darkness. Not yet. Not now. He had work to do. But before he left, he whispered, low and cold, "You're going to regret this." Ronan sat in his truck, staring at the house. His house. His wife. His bed. And the man inside it? Grayson Holt. A name Ronan hadn't thought about in years. Back in high school, Grayson had always been the rich kid who had it all. Money, charm, the girls. But the one thing he never got? Delilah. Ronan had won her. Married her. Built a life with her. And now, Grayson had taken that too. Ronan clenched his jaw. He wasn't just going to hurt them. He was going to destroy them. He grabbed his phone and pulled up Grayson's name. The military had taught him a lot of things. How to track enemies, how to find their weaknesses, how to break them from the inside out. And Grayson? He was about to learn why Ronan was trained to kill. Ronan's fingers gripped the steering wheel so tightly that the leather groaned under the pressure. His jaw locked, eyes dark as he stared at the house. His house. He should have been inside. Should have been lying in that bed holding his wife. Instead, another man had taken his place. But not just any man. Grayson Holt. The one person from his past who had always been there, lurking, waiting for a moment of weakness. And now, he had won. Or so he thought. Ronan knew war. He had fought insurgents, eliminated high-value targets, survived ambushes in the most godforsaken corners of the world. He didn't react on impulse. He calculated. He planned. He executed. And right now, Grayson and Delilah had no idea they were about to be hunted. He took a deep breath. His body burned with rage, but rage was a distraction. He needed clarity. Precision. So instead of storming inside, he backed away. He watched them for one more minute. Memorized their movements. The way Delilah curled against Grayson like she had never belonged to anyone else. The way Grayson smirked, like he had stolen something that never belonged to him. Fine. He let the truck roll down the street, the headlights off. But as he drove away, he whispered 2 words under his breath, the promise of a soldier who never left a battle unfinished. Not yet. Ronan pulled into a deserted parking lot, his mind already working. Killing them was too easy. Too quick. They needed to suffer. He unlocked his phone and opened a secure military database. One of the many perks of being special forces, he still had access to things most civilians didn't. Step 1. Find Grayson's weaknesses. It took him less than 10 minutes. Grayson Holt, real estate mogul. Multiple properties. Multiple shady business dealings. A few bribes here, some fraud there, nothing that had ever stuck. Yet, a hidden bank account in the Cayman Islands. Interesting. Ronan smirked. Step 2. Leverage. Delilah. She had always been obsessed with security, with wealth. He knew her well enough to know that if Grayson started falling apart, she'd jump ship fast. So Ronan got to work. He hacked into Grayson's business email, planted a few anonymous tips. Within minutes, the real estate firm had flagged suspicious activity. He cracked into Delilah's phone, forwarded her some of Grayson's secret transactions, just enough to plant the seed of doubt. By morning, they wouldn't even see the storm coming. Then he opened his notes app and typed 1 sentence. They thought I was gone? Time to remind them who I am. 6:30 a.m. Delilah's phone pings. She rubbed her eyes, yawning as she reached for her phone. A text notification flashed on the screen. Unknown number. I hope you trust Grayson. Because his money isn't where you think it is. Her heartbeat spiked. What the hell? She muttered, clicking the message. Attached was a screenshot. Bank statements. A hidden offshore account. Grayson had never told her about this. Frowning, she sat up. Had he lied to her? Meanwhile, in a corporate office downtown, Grayson Holt's phone buzzed as he stepped into a boardroom full of investors. Internal fraud alert. Your account has been flagged for suspicious transactions. A full audit has been launched. Grayson's breath caught in his throat. An audit? Of what? Panic gripped his chest. This wasn't supposed to happen. His secrets were buried deep, protected. Who the hell had done this? Back in his truck, parked in a lot overlooking the city, Ronan smirked as he watched it unfold. They had taken everything from him. Now, he was going to take everything from them. And this was just the beginning. Grayson paced his office, his perfectly tailored suit wrinkled from the stress weighing on his shoulders. The audit had blindsided him. His lawyer had called that morning, nervous, jittery, asking if there was anything Grayson needed to confess before they went into damage control. But there was nothing to confess, because no one should have known about those accounts. And yet, someone did. He stared at the computer screen, rereading the fraud alert email. It was a warning, clear as day. Someone was inside his accounts. Someone was coming for him. And that wasn't even the worst part. Grayson. Delilah's voice cut through the tension like a knife. She never used that tone unless she was pissed. He turned around, masking his nerves. Morning, sweetheart. She held up her phone, her manicured fingers shaking slightly as she pointed at the message. Unknown number. I hope you trust Grayson. Because his money isn't where you think it is. Her eyes were sharp. What the hell is this? Grayson's stomach dropped. He swallowed down the panic. Think fast. Control the situation. Spam, he said smoothly. Probably some hacker trying to scare you. Her eyes narrowed. Then why does this screenshot show a Cayman Islands account with your name on it? Grayson's heart pounded in his ears. How did she get that? I don't know what that is. His voice was calm, but his mind was racing. She folded her arms. You're lying. Grayson stepped toward her. He needed to shut this down fast. Delilah, baby, listen to me. Someone is trying to mess with us. Her jaw clenched. Yeah. And I think I know who. Grayson stiffened. Ronan. Had he come back? No. He was overseas. Gone. Wasn't he? Delilah turned the screen toward him. It's him, Grayson. It has to be. A cold sweat broke out across his back. And for the first time he realized they might be in real danger. Ronan watched from a distance. His truck was parked down the street out of sight. He had a clear view of Grayson's office window. Grayson had always been a man of control. A manipulator. A chess player. But now, he was crumbling. Ronan had spent years studying his enemies, tracking their behaviors, anticipating their next moves. Grayson was no different. He had just planted the first seed of doubt. Now it was time to let it grow. Meanwhile, Delilah's POV. Delilah stood in their modern, glass-walled penthouse, staring at her reflection. Her hands trembled as she gripped her phone. She had convinced herself that Ronan was never coming back. She had made peace with that fact. But now, she wasn't so sure. She scrolled up through the unknown messages. You really think he was never coming back? You think you got away with it? Some betrayals don't go unanswered. Her chest tightened. She had loved Ronan. What? But Grayson had convinced her that Ronan was never coming home. That a soldier like him wouldn't make it back. She had mourned him. And then? She had moved on. Hadn't she? A knock at the door made her flinch. She turned, expecting Grayson. Instead, it was a small, unmarked envelope. Her pulse spiked as she bent down and picked it up. She ripped it open, her breath catching at the single item inside. A photo. Grayson. In bed. The exact moment Ronan had seen them. A whisper of panic crept up her spine. Someone was watching them. And there was only one man who would have sent this. Ronan. She wasn't mourning him anymore. Now, she was terrified of him. Ronan tapped the screen of his laptop, watching the security feeds. He had hacked into Grayson's office building cameras, his home security, and even his phone records. There was nowhere for him to hide. And Delilah? She had opened the package. She knew. The fear had settled in. Good. But this wasn't enough. They needed to suffer. More. Ronan cracked his knuckles, then started typing. Grayson's office, 11:45 a.m. Grayson's phone buzzed. Incoming email, urgent. Subject, your secrets are not safe. Grayson hesitated, then clicked. A video played. It was him. In bed with Delilah. The timestamp? The night before Ronan came home. His blood ran ice cold. A text followed immediately after. You took my wife, my home, my life. Now I take yours. Grayson jumped to his feet, his pulse racing. His assistant poked her head in. Mr. Holt, you're pale. Everything all right? He forced a tight smile. Cancel my meetings. She frowned. All of them? Yes. His voice was clipped. Now. He grabbed his jacket and stormed out. He needed to get to Delilah. Because now, they were being hunted. And they both knew exactly who was behind it. Ronan Hayes was back. Grayson drove like a man possessed. His knuckles were white against the steering wheel, his mind spinning in 1,000 directions. Who the hell was doing this? He knew the answer. He just didn't want to say it out loud. Ronan Hayes. But it wasn't possible. He was supposed to be overseas. Grayson had checked. Hell, Delilah had been certain. Unless, his chest tightened. Had he returned sooner than expected? Had he seen? No. That night they had been careful. Or so he thought. His phone buzzed again. Unknown number. Did you think you'd get away with it? Grayson's breath caught. The hairs on his arms stood up. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was personal. He gritted his teeth, pulling up to the penthouse building. He shoved past the doorman, taking the elevator up to their place. The moment he stepped inside, he saw Delilah standing in the living room, clutching the photo. Her hands trembled as she looked up at him. He's back. Grayson slammed the door behind him. You don't know that. She held up the photo. Then who the hell sent this? Silence. A thick, suffocating silence. Delilah's voice wavered. He's watching us, Grayson. He saw everything. Grayson ran a hand through his hair. Then we need to find him first. Delilah's eyes widened. What do you mean? Grayson's gaze darkened. We finish what we started. Ronan leaned against the hood of his truck, watching. Waiting. Grayson and Delilah were unraveling faster than he expected. Good. He had always known that Grayson's biggest weakness wasn't money or power. It was control. And Ronan was stripping that away piece by piece. He had spent years tracking high-value targets. He knew how they thought, how they reacted under pressure. Grayson was like every arrogant man Ronan had taken down in the field, too confident, too convinced he was untouchable. But now, he was scared. And scared men made mistakes. Ronan checked his phone. Live feed, accessing Grayson Holt's penthouse security cameras. He clicked the video and there they were. Delilah pacing. Grayson furious. They were planning something. Too late. Ronan smirked, then dialed a number. A voice answered. Yeah. Ronan kept his tone cold, unshaken. I need a favor. A distraction. The man on the other end laughed. Shit, you back in town? Yeah. Must be serious if you're calling me. It is. Silence. Then. All right. What do you need? Ronan's jaw tightened. Grayson Holt. I want his world to burn. 3:45 a.m., Grayson's penthouse. The sound of glass shattering sent Delilah bolting upright. She turned to Grayson, shaking his arm. Did you hear that? Grayson groaned, half asleep. It's probably nothing. Then, bang. Another crash. Delilah's blood turned ice cold. Grayson shot up. Stay here. Delilah grabbed his wrist. No. What if? But he was already moving. Grayson reached for the gun in his nightstand, his heart racing. He crept toward the hallway, feet silent against the marble. The living room was dark. But something felt wrong. Then he saw it. The balcony door was open. His stomach plummeted. He had locked it before going to bed. Hadn't he? Then a whisper. Right behind him. You're slipping, Grayson. Grayson spun, gun raised. No one was there. The apartment was empty. But on the coffee table, where there had been nothing before, sat a burner phone. Buzz. A single text flashed across the screen. You should have stayed out of my bed. Grayson's hands shook. Ronan was here. Watching. Waiting. And this was just the beginning. Grayson stood in the dimly lit penthouse, the burner phone still buzzing in his palm. His breath was uneven, his pulse racing like a war drum in his chest. Delilah stood behind him, her voice barely above a whisper. What does it say? Grayson hesitated, his grip tightening around the device. You should have stayed out of my bed. A chill crawled up his spine. He knew that tone. Knew that kind of threat. This wasn't some random hacker. This was Ronan. And that meant he wasn't safe anymore. He exhaled sharply, finally turning to Delilah. Her face was pale, her hands wrapped around herself like she was trying to keep from shaking. This isn't possible, she muttered. He was supposed to be gone. We checked, Grayson. We checked everything. Grayson ran a hand down his face, his frustration boiling over. We didn't check hard enough, he growled. The anger was a mask, a distraction from the fact that for the first time in years he was afraid. Delilah's eyes flickered toward the shattered glass on the floor, then to the open balcony door. You think? She swallowed hard. You think he was inside? Grayson didn't answer. Because he knew the truth. Yes, Ronan had been here. Inside their home. Watching. Leaving messages in the dark like a ghost. And they never even heard him. Delilah backed away. We need to leave. Grayson shook his head. No. What? Her voice rose, panic bleeding into her tone. Grayson, he's inside our apartment. He's already messing with your business, he's inside our heads. What the hell are we supposed to do? Just wait until he kills us in our sleep? Grayson's jaw clenched. No. No, he wouldn't let it come to that. His pride wouldn't allow it. His ego wouldn't allow it. He had spent years building his empire. He had taken what he wanted. And now, some washed-up soldier thought he could waltz back in and take it from him? Ronan wants a war? Grayson murmured. Fine. He grabbed his phone and dialed the number. It rang once, then twice. A gravelly voice answered. Mr. Holt. Grayson's fingers curled into a fist. I need someone found. Fast. Pause. That's gonna cost. Don't care. Find him. And when you do. Grayson's eyes flickered toward the shattered glass. Make sure he never comes back again. Ronan sat in the back of a rundown dive bar, the dim lights flickering above him. He wasn't drinking. Not tonight. Tonight he was waiting. The door creaked open and a figure stepped inside. A broad-shouldered man with tattoos creeping up his neck, his movements controlled, careful. Ronan didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Dax Cooper. An old friend. An old brother in arms. Dax slid into the seat across from him. You always did have a bad habit of starting fires you can't put out. Ronan smirked. Good thing I never tried to put them out then. Dax shook his head. I heard the rumors. You're back. And you're going after Holt? Ronan's expression didn't change. He took something from me. Dax leaned forward, lowering his voice. You need to be careful, man. Grayson? He's not just some prick playing rich guy. He's dangerous. He's got people. People that don't play fair. Ronan's lips pressed into a thin line. Neither do I. Dax exhaled, shaking his head. You don't get it. He already put a bounty on you. His people are looking for you, and when they find you... He let the words hang in the air. Ronan tilted his head. Let them try. Dax cursed under his breath. You're a stubborn son of a bitch. Ronan leaned forward, his voice low. I'm a patient son of a bitch. Silence. Then Dax sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. All right, fine. If you're really going down this road. He reached into his jacket and slid a folder across the table. Ronan raised a brow. What's this? Insurance? Dax muttered. Grayson's not just some real estate guy. He's got skeletons, man. Big ones. You dig into this? You'll bury him. Ronan opened the folder. And for the first time he felt something different than rage. He felt opportunity. Because Grayson Holt? He wasn't just a cheater. He was a criminal. And now, Ronan had the proof. Delilah paced the penthouse, her nerves on edge. Grayson had been gone for hours. Her phone sat on the kitchen counter, face down, but she knew if she picked it up, she'd see more messages from the unknown number. Her stomach churned. What if it wasn't just text? What if Ronan was closer than they thought? The thought made her chest tighten. She turned to look at the large glass windows. The city stretched out below them, bright and endless. But in the reflection, she swore she saw something move behind her. She spun around. Nothing. Her breath came faster now. She wasn't safe. She could feel it. Then her phone rang. She jumped, snatching it up. Grayson's name. She answered immediately. Where the hell are you? She snapped. His voice was tense. Urgent. Listen to me. Lock the doors. Her stomach dropped. What? Do it. Now. She rushed to the front door, flipping every lock. Grayson, what the hell is going on? There was a pause. A long, chilling pause. Then Grayson muttered, He's not just messing with us anymore. He's coming. A sharp knock sounded at the front door. Delilah's breath caught. Her hands shook. She didn't move. The knock came again. More forceful. More deliberate. Grayson's voice was tight. Delilah. Who's at the door? She slowly turned the doorknob. Then, a voice on the other side of the door whispered, Miss me? Pause here. Dear good listeners. A lot of people listen to the story, but only 5% subscribe. I work hard to bring you amazing stories every day. This time, my goal is to hit 1,000 subscribers this week. So, my awesome audience, show some love. Hit that subscribe button now. Let's continue our story. Delilah's hand froze on the doorknob. The voice on the other side had been calm. Cold. Familiar. Miss me? Her blood turned to ice. She took a staggered step back, her chest rising and falling too fast. Delilah. Grayson's voice snapped through the phone. Do not open that door. But it was too late. Because the lock clicked. The door didn't swing open fully, just a few inches. But enough. Enough for her to see the man standing on the other side. Ronan. Her husband. Her heart stopped. He wasn't the man she remembered. Gone was the clean-shaven soldier who had kissed her goodbye at the airport all those months ago. The man standing in front of her now? This man was different. His jaw was sharper, covered in dark stubble. His eyes? Cold. Calculating. Unreadable. His posture was too controlled, too quiet. Like a predator studying prey. Delilah's throat went dry. She took another step back. Ronan? He tilted his head slightly. Didn't expect to see me so soon, did you? Her fingers dug into the edge of the door. Grayson's voice crackled through the phone. Delilah, closed the damn door. Ronan's gaze flickered toward the phone in her hand. Then, without warning, he moved. Fast. Too fast. Before Delilah could react, his hand shot forward and snatched the phone out of her grip. She gasped, but Ronan had already pressed it to his ear. Grayson, he said, voice low. We need to talk. Then he crushed the phone under his boot. Delilah stumbled backward, her pulse hammering. Ronan stepped inside the penthouse, calm as ever. She was trapped. She knew running wouldn't work. Not with him. Not with a soldier. Her mind screamed at her to say something. Anything. But all she could do was stare. Ronan's gaze flickered around the room. The expensive furniture. The luxury. The life she had built without him. He exhaled slowly. Nice place. Delilah swallowed hard. What do you want? He met her eyes. What's mine? Her stomach twisted. He didn't just mean the apartment. He meant everything. Ronan took another step forward. I don't like repeating myself, Delilah. So let's make this simple. You and Grayson took everything from me. My home. My life. My name. His fingers traced over the sleek kitchen counter, his touch slow. Deliberate. Now, he murmured, I'm going to take everything from you. Delilah's chest tightened. You wouldn't hurt me. Ronan's eyes locked onto hers. Wouldn't I? Silence. A deep, suffocating silence. She had never been afraid of him before. But now she wasn't so sure. Her voice trembled. If you do anything, Grayson will? Ronan's smirk was sharp. Dangerous. Grayson, he said slowly, is a dead man walking. Delilah flinched. Because the way he said it? It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. 10:15 p.m., downtown Knoxville. Grayson was already in his car, speeding down the highway. He had heard everything. Ronan was inside the penthouse. With Delilah. His grip tightened on the wheel. This was bad. Very bad. He needed to get there. Fast. But then his phone rang. He hesitated. A new number. He clicked accept. Who the hell is this? Pause. Then a familiar voice. Nice car, Grayson. His blood ran cold. He slammed on the brakes, his eyes scanning the rearview mirror. Where are you? Grayson demanded. A dark chuckle. Closer than you think. And then, before Grayson could react, his windshield shattered. A gunshot. A warning. Grayson cursed, swerving the car. His pulse skyrocketed. He had underestimated just how far Ronan was willing to go. Because this wasn't just revenge. This was war. Grayson's heart pounded like a war drum. His ears rang from the gunshot, the sharp crack of shattering glass still vibrating through his bones. He swerved the car, gripping the wheel too tight, his breath ragged. His mind was racing. Ronan had found him. No more messages. No more mind games. Now it was real. His phone was still clutched in his hand, but the call had ended. The line had gone dead. That meant only one thing. Ronan wasn't playing anymore. He was hunting. Grayson's foot slammed against the gas pedal, pushing the car to its limit as he sped through the empty streets. He needed to get back to Delilah. No. But before he could think any further, another gunshot. His side mirror exploded in a rain of glass. Grayson cursed, his body tensing. He was being followed. His eyes flickered to the rearview mirror. A pair of headlights in the distance. Oh, unrelenting. Tracking him. Then the headlights flickered. A signal. A warning. Grayson clenched his teeth, his knuckles turning white. Ronan was toying with him. This wasn't just a chase. This was a message. Another sharp turn. He veered into an alley, tires screeching against the pavement. He needed to lose him. Fast. He pushed the accelerator to the floor. But then his phone buzzed. A text. You can run, Grayson. But you can't hide. Shit. Grayson's stomach twisted. How the hell was Ronan tracking him? He glanced around the car, his mind spinning. Then he saw it. A tiny black tracker blinking underneath the dashboard. Planted. Hidden. Watching. Grayson ripped it out, hurling it out the window. For a moment, silence. The chase had stopped. Had he lost him? He exhaled sharply, his grip loosening. Maybe. A loud crash. Before he could react, something slammed into the back of his car. Hard. The impact sent him skidding across the road. Grayson struggled to regain control, but it was too late. The car spun out. And then, everything went black. Grayson woke to the sound of metal groaning. His head throbbed. His vision blurred. The world around him was spinning. He was still in his car. Or what was left of it. The front end had crashed into a pole, steam rising from the wreckage. His windshield was cracked, spiderweb fractures stretching across the glass. A dark figure stood outside. Ronan. Grayson's pulse spiked. He struggled to move, but his seatbelt held him in place. Then the driver's side door yanked open. A rough hand gripped the front of his shirt, dragging him out of the car. Grayson hit the ground hard. Gravel dug into his palms as he gasped for air. Before he could react, a boot pressed against his chest, pinning him down. Ronan crouched beside him, his expression unreadable. Calm. Controlled. Deadly. Grayson tried to catch his breath. You crazy son of a... Ronan's boot pressed harder. Careful, Ronan murmured. I haven't decided if you're leaving here alive. Grayson's jaw clenched. If you kill me, they'll? Ronan's laugh was cold. You really think I'm stupid enough to kill you here? He leaned in closer, voice dropping to a whisper. Killing you would be too easy. Grayson's stomach twisted. Ronan pulled something from his jacket and tossed it onto Grayson's chest. A flash drive. Take a good look, Ronan said softly. Grayson frowned, his breath uneven. What is this? Ronan's eyes burned into him. Proof. Grayson's heartbeat slowed. No, it couldn't be. Ronan straightened. By this time tomorrow, everyone you work with will see exactly what's on that drive. Grayson's blood turned cold. He knew what was on it. And if Ronan released it, his entire empire would crumble. Ronan's voice was quiet, but his words cut like a blade. You took my life, my home, my wife. His jaw tightened. Now I'm taking everything from you. Then he was gone. Grayson lay there, his chest rising and falling too fast. For the first time in his life, he had no way out. Delilah paced the penthouse, her nerves frayed. Where the hell was Grayson? She had tried calling, but no answer. Something was wrong. Then, a knock at the door. She hesitated. Who is it? Silence. Another knock. Louder this time. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Then, a voice. Open the door, Delilah. She froze. No, it couldn't be. Slowly, her fingers wrapped around the doorknob. She twisted it open. Grayson stood in the doorway. His clothes were disheveled. His face pale. His hands shaking. She had never seen him like this before. Grayson? She swallowed. What happened? He didn't answer. Instead, he walked inside straight to the bar. Poured himself a drink with shaking hands. Delilah's chest tightened. Grayson, talk to me. You're scaring me. Finally he spoke, his voice hoarse. He's going to ruin us. Delilah's throat went dry. He set the drink down, turning to face her. And when she saw his eyes, she knew. This wasn't just fear. This was panic, desperation, defeat. Grayson Holt, the man who always had a plan, always had a way out, had just realized he was trapped. And Ronan was about to burn their world to the ground. The first sign of destruction came just after midnight. Grayson sat in his office, the drink still in his hand, his mind spiraling. His empire, the one he had built with blood and ruthless ambition, was now hanging by a thread. Ronan had proof. And if that flash drive was real, then by the time the sun rose, Grayson Holt wouldn't just be ruined. He'd be a hunted man. His mind raced through possibilities. Destroy the evidence? Too late. Ronan had more. Disappear? No. He had too much to lose. Then his phone rang. Unknown caller. His fingers curled around the glass as he answered. Speak, he ordered. Pause. Then a slow, calm voice. Enjoying the last few hours of your life, Grayson? Grayson's grip tightened. Where the hell are you? Ronan chuckled. Everywhere. Grayson's teeth clenched. You think you can just... A loud explosion cut him off. The windows shook. The entire building rattled. Grayson whipped around, his heart hammering. What the F? From his office window he could see black smoke rising. A few blocks away. One of his properties. His biggest hotel. Burning. Ronan's voice was smooth. Unshaken. That's one. The line went dead. Grayson's hands trembled as he stared at the fire, flames licking at the sky. Ronan wasn't just ruining him. He was burning his empire down. One piece at a time. Delilah sat at the kitchen counter, her hands wrapped around a half-empty glass of wine. She hadn't slept. Couldn't sleep. Her world was falling apart. The man she thought she had built a future with, Grayson Holt, was unraveling before her eyes. And Ronan? He was coming for them. Her phone vibrated. Another unknown number. She hesitated. Then slowly she picked up. She didn't say anything. Just waited. A breath. Then, his voice. How's it feel, Delilah? Her stomach tightened. How does what feel? To be on the other side. Her fingers dug into the counter. Ronan, please? He let out a quiet laugh. Now you beg. A lump formed in her throat. I never meant to hurt you, she whispered. Ronan's voice was steady. Cold. But you did. Silence. Her pulse was rapid, her chest rising and falling too fast. Then his tone shifted. Lower. Sharper. You have a choice, Delilah. Her brows furrowed. What? Stay with him? You burn with him. Her breath caught. Walk away now. You live. Her heart slammed against her ribs. This wasn't just a warning. It was a final chance. And deep down she knew Ronan never bluffed. She swallowed. You're giving me an out? Pause. Then Ronan's voice softened. I'm giving you one last mercy. Then the line went dead. Delilah sat there, her hands shaking. A choice. But could she really leave? And if she didn't, how much time did she have left? For him. Grayson couldn't breathe. His mind wouldn't stop spinning. His empire was crumbling. Everything was slipping through his fingers. And the worst part? He had no way to stop it. The flash drive Ronan had left him was real. He had watched the files. The evidence. Illegal deals. Money laundering. Worse. It was enough to bury him for life. He poured himself another drink, his hands shaking. Then, Delilah stepped into the room. He glanced up. She was still in her silk robe, but her eyes were different. Distant. Cold. Grayson frowned. What's wrong with you? She swallowed. I need to ask you something. He exhaled, leaning back. Make it quick. Her voice was barely above a whisper. If I leave, will he stop? Grayson froze. His grip tightened around his glass. What? She licked her lips, her breath uneven. If I leave you, will he stop? Grayson's stomach turned. No, he said darkly. It won't matter. He's not going to stop until I'm in the ground. Delilah's throat constricted. That meant she had one choice. Stay. She burned with him. Live. She might survive. Grayson saw the hesitation in her face. And for the first time, a new fear crept into his chest. Not of Ronan. Of Delilah. Because if she left, if she flipped on him, he was done. He shot to his feet, grabbing her wrist. You're not going anywhere. Delilah flinched. Grayson. His grip tightened. You're mine. Do you understand? Her stomach twisted. This wasn't love. This was control. And for the first time she saw Grayson for who he really was. A desperate man. A man who knew he was losing. Her voice shook. Let me go, Grayson. His jaw clenched. No. Then, a knock at the door. They both froze. The air shifted. Delilah's pulse spiked. Another knock. Louder. Heavier. Grayson reached for the gun on his desk. Slowly he moved toward the door. His fingers wrapped around the knob. He pulled it open. And his entire body locked up. Because standing there? Ronan. Dressed in black. Calm. Unshaken. His voice was quiet. Time's up, Grayson. Grayson stood frozen in the doorway, his breath shallow. Ronan was here. Not a text. Not a shadow. Not a distant threat. The man himself. And in that moment, Grayson knew, this wasn't a warning anymore. This was the endgame. Delilah's breath hitched behind him. She didn't have to see Ronan's face to know what was coming. She could feel it in the air. The war had boiled over. No more messages. No more waiting. This was it. Ronan took a step forward, his eyes locked on Grayson like a predator ready to strike. And then, the sound of a gun cocking. Grayson's grip tightened on his weapon, his finger hovering over the trigger. The room was silent. Tension thick enough to suffocate. Then Ronan smirked. Better make your next move count, Grayson. Fade to black. Part 1 ends here. But this war? It's far from over. What happens next? Will Ronan finish what he started? Will Delilah betray Grayson to save herself? And when the first shot is fired, who walks away alive? Find out in Part 2. Like, comment, and subscribe. You won't want to miss what comes next. Part 2, the final hunt, coming soon.